Hello and welcome back to a new lecture on semantics. Today we're going to discuss a few things to keep in mind when working out a theory of semantics. So the first thing we're going to discuss is contextualized meaning. So we're going to take a closer look at that. We're also going to ask a central question here. What does meaning mean? Pretty central question. We've been talking about meaning for a while. Now we want to know, what do we mean when we say we want to know about meaning? Alright, so the third thing we want to talk about here is what level of semantic analysis are we looking at? So there are different levels of semantics, and it's a very, very huge topic. So we have to be precise about what level we're going to look at before we actually dive into something like that. Okay, let's begin. So you may recall that the first problem that the principle of compositionality was unable to deal with was contextualized meaning. Recall our example of contextualized meaning, where we said the sentence, "I'm hungry," can have two different meanings based on the context. So if the context is a beggar on the street, "I'm hungry" would probably mean I need some money. If the context was not a beggar, then it would probably mean something like let's get lunch. Alright, so what is semantics going to do with context? Well, actually nothing. See, context has its own place, and that place is pragmatics. We are dealing with semantics. The difference between the two: pragmatics deals with language above the sentence level, but semantics deals with language within the sentence level. The other difference is that pragmatics is concerned with context and contextualized effects, while semantics is linguistic proper, meaning that it only is concerned with actual linguistic knowledge, let's say. So I guess you could say that solves the problem of the context for the principle of compositionality, given that semantics is not concerned with context, at least in this course. Generally speaking, however, there is considerable overlap between semantics and pragmatics, and one must be very careful before saying that one part is for pragmatics and the other part is for semantics. But for our purposes here, that will do. The second thing we want to talk about here is a word we've been hearing about for the last few lectures. The word is meaning. And we're asking about meaning and how we arrive at meaning and how we produce meaning, but we've never actually found out what the word meaning actually means. So we need to recognize first that the term meaning can be applied to two different things. It can be applied to the users of language, or it can be applied to sentences themselves, or the actual language. So if we're applying this to the actual language or the actual sentences, then we come up with something we've already heard before, which is sentence meaning. If we're applying this to the users of the language, then we also come up with something we already talked about before, which is speaker meaning. So understanding the difference between sentence meaning and speaker meaning is very crucial before we embark on a journey of identifying or creating a theory of semantics. Now, let me just make it clear that we're not only dealing here with sentence meaning, but also with word meaning. So really what's crucial is not whether it's a sentence or it's a word, but whether it's part of language or linguistic knowledge, as opposed to something that might have to do with individual differences or the context, like speaker meaning. So again, in this course, we are focusing on this side, the sentence meaning and the word meaning. Now also, when we talk about what does it mean to mean, there's another aspect that we can look at. So take this sentence, for example. It's raining heavily here. Now, does this sentence have meaning? Well, of course it does, since we understand it. So basically, since the sentence makes sense, it's not nonsense, then yes, it has meaning. But in the sentence, "colorless green ideas sleep furiously," there is no meaning, and that is because the sentence does not make sense. It is nonsense. So now we know that the first sentence is meaningful, while the second sentence is not. But for a sentence to be meaningful is not the whole picture. That's not the whole story. Actually, there's a bit more to it. Going back to our original sentence, it's raining heavily here. Now imagine two scenarios. In the first scenario, you are in New York, you call up your friend who is in London, and you ask your friend how the weather is in London, to which they reply, it's raining heavily here. Now in this case, not only is this sentence meaningful, but also it's informative. If a sentence is informative, that means it provides the listener with new information that the listener did not know of before. In this case, the guy from London provided us with new information about the weather in London that the person in New York did not know about. But imagine a second scenario. Now in this second scenario, you're at a bus stop. So there are two people standing here at the bus stop, patiently waiting for the bus. All of a sudden, one person looks at the other and says, it's raining heavily here. Now what would be the purpose of speaker A's utterance of the sentence, it's raining heavily here, to person B, given that they do not know each other? Okay? The only reason for such a sentence would be to break the ice between the two, and as a politeness gesture, to break away any awkward situation. Now speaker B is standing right next to speaker A, so speaker B obviously knows that it's raining heavily here. So did speaker B hear something meaningful from speaker A? Yes. Did speaker B hear something informative or something new? No. So now we know the difference between meaningfulness and informativeness. Now that we're done with that, there's a third thing we want to keep in our minds before we start with a theory of semantics, and that is the levels of semantic analysis. Now we can look at semantics from more than one point of view. We can look at it in terms of words, we can look at it in terms of sentences, and we can also look at it in terms of utterances. So if one person would start building a theory of semantics from scratch and thinking about the word level, the sentence level, and the utterance level, that person's job would be very, very difficult. So when starting a theory of semantics, we first have to specify which level of semantic analysis we are dealing with. Is it the word level, sentence level, or the utterance level? In this course, we divide up our course into two main parts. First part, we start with the word level, and the second part, we start with the sentence level.